Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening, and may I start by wishing everyone a very, very happy White Cane Week. This is a very special time to recognize the independence, mobility, and lived experience of people who are blind or have low vision. We are starting this webinar here at 6 o'clock. I figure there's probably going to be a few more people that are going to join, but I'm just going to start off with some housekeeping rules, and then we can jump right into everything. I'd like to remind everyone that this is actually a two-part series. So there is another webinar this Thursday, another Q&A from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please, if you're interested in hearing from Priscilla Gagne, she is also another Paralympian, and you haven't registered yet, you can do so by finding that on the CCB website, so ccbnational.net, under the White Cane Week events page. So yeah, before we begin, just a few quick housekeeping notes. I am Amanda, and I will be moderating questions for our speaker, Jason, after he finishes his talk. If you'd like to ask a question live, please use the raised hand function, and I'll call on you to grant microphone access. You're also welcome to type questions into the chat, and I can read them during the Q&A as well. There is a Q&A button, as you'll probably notice too, as well as the chat. I'll make sure to check both. Please keep your microphones muted. They already are right now, unless you have been called on. So with that being said, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker today. Jason Dunkerley is a 5-time Paralympic middle distance runner and medalist who has represented Canada for over 25 years. After immigrating to Canada from Northern Ireland, Jason navigated vision loss to build an elite athletic career. Beyond sport, he is also an author, musician, and federal sport policy professional who continues to advocate for inclusive physical activity as well as equitable access to sports for people of all abilities. So Jason, thank you so much for being here today, and I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Hi everyone, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the country. And I really, I'm really grateful just for this opportunity to join you here, and given that it's White Cane Week, I think it's just a really important opportunity just to take a moment to reflect a bit about blindness and visual impairment, and some of the challenges and opportunities that I think many of us can relate to. Yeah, so it's a privilege for me to just have the chance to share a bit of my own kind of journey and story with you here this evening. So I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I was born with a condition called Leber's congenital amaurosis, which is basically it affects the way the photoreceptors receive information at the back of the eye. And I was blind, or have been blind since birth, and also grew up with two brothers who had the same condition, two younger twin brothers. And as Amanda mentioned, I was born in Northern Ireland. And growing up with two brothers having the same condition, also had a sister, or have a sister, who does not have the same condition as we do. But I think with my brothers and I, having this Leber's congenital amaurosis together, I mean, there was probably a sense of comfort to some extent in not being alone as kind of a blind kid, growing up with brothers the same condition as me, and it made blindness feel a little bit less weird, I would say. And my brothers and I, adapted our own games and our own activities. We learned to ride bikes around our kind of the area where we lived, kind of the immediate neighborhood, which is kind of crazy in retrospect, but we did it. And we also adapted our own version of soccer. We would tie a plastic grocery bag around a soccer ball so you could hear the ball, as it was coming towards you. And so that really, I think, in a lot of ways helped to normalize, being a kind of being a blind kid and, having each other to kind of, I guess, support each other. My parents separated when I was 7, and my mother essentially raised us on our own from there on. And she really wanted us to be, to be strong, to be confident. Um, and she taught me so much. I mean, she taught me, how to get around kind of the neighborhood we lived in using just kind of a cane and just my senses. Um, she taught me how to make a peanut butter sandwich. I mean, all kinds of things. Um, and she had me and my brothers also in scouts and involved in lots of different sports, including tandem cycling, and did a lot of that when I was younger. Um, but something was kind of drawing me towards running, and my brothers and I went to a school for students who were blind, and we had the chance to participate in different sports at that school in Northern Ireland. And I remember um, running my first cross country race. I was about 11, and I remember saying to my mother that morning, I think I'm gonna win this race, and um, that didn't happen. I remember starting in the race too fast and having to slow down and actually walk with the teacher who I was running with, who was guiding me. And so that was definitely a rude awakening, but you know, something kind of challenged me to want to keep going with running and to try to work at it and get better. And there was something about it that just kind of um, really intrigued me, I guess. And we lived in a house which had a fairly sort of big backyard, and um, I started to actually run laps around the yard. I learned kind of the how to get around the yard without running into the fence, and I think it was like 16 laps to the mile, something like that. We figured out. So I started doing that, and also running a bit with my uncle. And then there was also this older gentleman who lived in our neighborhood who at one point had represented Northern Ireland. His name was Eddie Johnson, and he was in his 60s at that time. He would actually come and take me out for a couple of kilometers, and he was an incredible shape and incredible motivator for me. Um, my mother met. She had a best friend in Northern Ireland, and her best friend's brother had moved to Canada some years before, and he came back to visit his family and met my mother, and basically he would become our stepdad, and we moved to Canada with him in the early 1990s, 1991. I was 13 years old at the time, and it was a big move. And we moved to Hamilton in southern Ontario, and I had a very difficult time with the move at first. We left a very close knit, family and community in Northern Ireland where we lived and where I grew up. So I was very homesick at first, and it took quite a while for me to begin to feel more at home in Canada. But I think sports and running in particular was a big help. It really it gave me something to kind of grab onto and I guess work towards. And my brothers and I went to school in Brantford, Ontario, at the W. Ross McDonald School. Some of you might be familiar with it. Some of you might have been there as students. And it was a very enabling environment, I would say, uh, for me, certainly, just being interested in sports and interested in running, because we had teachers there who were just wonderful in terms of just supporting us and encouraging us to try and push the limits and discover wrestling and goalball and running for sure, and not just sports, music also. And I learned to play the guitar in high school. My stepdad played also, so I kind of was inspired to learn from him. And then I played more in high school and studied classical guitar throughout high school. Um, so music was definitely important to me, but running was a big focus for sure. And I think when you're um, younger and you have a lot of room for improvement, and you start to notice that you're getting a little bit stronger, a little bit better at something, it's really a positive cycle. And um, I started to feel really encouraged and started to feel stronger, and I was getting faster. And one or two teachers in particular really were really role models for me, and really supported me on my journey through high school running. And so I knew that by the end of high school, I wanted to continue beyond high school. I was definitely not at that point you know um, close to making a national team, but I was getting better. I was getting stronger, and I knew I wanted to explore it more and pursue it more. I ended up going to the University of Guelph, where I studied international development. Guelph is renowned as one of the sort of the top varsity running programs universities in Canada, and so that was a big reason for me wanting to go there. And but it really was next level when it came to running. I mean, compared to the training that I had done in high school, and I wasn't sure what it was going to be like. Like what's it going to be like for me as a blind runner showing up at the University of Guelph, and are people going to know how a blind runner can run with a team and train. And I was very fortunate. I had a high school coach named Mr. Rattray, Brian Rattray, who came up to the University of Guelph and came and met with me with the cross country coach at that time, Dave Scott Thomas, and basically explained, this is how a blind runner can run and train. And the coach Dave was very open to me being part of the team and welcomed me to come out and train. And so that really opened the door of running in university. And just that openness on the part of Dave and on the part of the team really made all the difference. And the bar was definitely raised when it came to the expectation of hard workouts and training. But ultimately, it led me to improve a lot and make a big kind of leap in my ability. So that after my first year at the University of Guelph, I qualified for my first national team, which was the World International Blind Sport Association World Championships in 1998. And that was really the beginning of my international running. And it started me on a I guess a journey of about 25 years of being part of the national team up until 2023, um, including representing Canada at 5 Paralympics and in middle distance track events, so the 1500 meters, 800, 1500, and 5000 meter track events, running with a guide runner. Um, and My last Paralympics was in 2016 in Rio de Janeiro, and then I retired, from the track in 2023. Although I'm still running most days and preparing at the moment to run a marathon in about 3 months. So I still love running. It's still a huge part of my life. Um, I would say being a Paralympian and representing Canada has been truly a defining part of my life, and it's been an incredible privilege. And I could never have imagined, competing at the Paralympics as an overconfident 11-year-old, needing to walk in my first cross country race. And I could never have done it alone. People think that running is an individual sport, but it truly is, a team effort. And I think this is especially true um, when it comes to running with a guide. And I can tell you a quick story just from the 2012 Paralympics, because the previous year I had been injured and was sort of thinking about retirement. At that point, I was in my mid 30s, which will give you an idea of how old I am now. um, but in 2011, I had an Achilles injury and ended up um, being introduced to a new coach and starting to run and train with a new primary guide runner who himself, his name was Josh, himself, he was interested in actually trying to qualify for the Olympics as an able-bodied um, middle distance runner. And to make a long story short, he had some injuries that prevented him from really, pursuing qualification. But he still, Josh, still, trained hard with me and was able to help me in my training. And ultimately, we went to the London Paralympics and finished third in the 1500 and second in the 5000. And I remember, Josh telling me after after that the chance to be together on the podium, and share, the experience that we shared meant more to him than if he had made the Olympics on his own. So, um, that's really a testament um, to Josh and to his, commitment and investment in what we were trying to do together, and just really, also the team aspect of running, as a blind runner, and just the role that guide runners play, and I'm incredibly grateful to Josh and so many of the guides that I've had over the years, just for making this a possibility for me and for those of us who, want to participate in running and in sport, because we certainly can't do that alone. And I mentioned the privilege of competing at the Paralympics. But I think even more than that, perhaps, is actually, like, I think about the process of daily training and what that has given me. Um, because running and sport has been in so many ways a gateway and an outlet, for me to grow beyond sport. It had such a big part to play in where I wanted to go to university because of the strong running team there, which really attracted me to go to Guelph. And it also played a big part in, the type of work I find myself drawn towards, in accessibility and sport policy. Um, and running has also really connected me with so many wonderful people. My partner, being one of them. We met at the University of Guelph also, and running has empowered me to believe that, I could go beyond, what I thought I was, capable of, and it's taught me about discipline and determination, sticking with things, trying and not giving up. And I think as blind people who are visually impaired or blind, it can be all too easy to become discouraged. Many things in life, are harder in some ways, and I think the world, sometimes tells us, you don't fit here, or you can't do this. And I want to tell you that, blindness is absolutely not a barrier, and that in fact, blindness is really, it's just a different angle to see things from, in my view. Um, Blindness is an opportunity to meet people we never otherwise would. I mean, I'm not sure how many of you, meet people just day to day walking around, or on the bus or anywhere you are. Um, just incredible encounters that would never happen otherwise. It happens to me very often. Um, and I think really being blind or visually impaired challenges us to grow, in ways we otherwise, never could imagine. Um, Without blindness, I'm really sure I would not have, taken up running in the way I did. It wouldn't have been, such a big factor in my life as it has been. And I'm sure I wouldn't have, met so many of the people I have, um, you know, people that have been instrumental in my life. And I wouldn't have done many of the things I have. Probably not the work I'm doing either. Um, you know, I think what has helped me over time, um, in the moments of discouragement or when things feel tough as a blind person, has been to try to keep, a positive attitude. No matter what is happening, I think, um, I think to myself, things could always be worse, right? Um, um, One quick story I'll tell you. Just, years ago, I was hit by a car. A friend and I were running, and we were hit by an oncoming vehicle. We were trying to cross Colonel By, Drive in Ottawa, and we were both, quite injured, and certainly we were not able to run for months afterwards. But I remember, just, um, kind of in the weeks that followed, just I had a broken leg, I had a hairline fracture of my fibula, and, um, you know, I would start to, um, go for short walks, in my apartment, in the hallway, and At first, I think it was all I could probably do to make it to the end of the hallway, and that was about it. But over the days and weeks that followed, being able to start to add more and more distance to those walks and times to the walks. So, eventually it would be kind of maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or, 30 minutes eventually. Um, and those little additions of time really started to feel like little wins, and I think um, I found strength in being able to build up those little wins over time. You start to feel like you're actually working towards something and getting stronger, and that helps to, for me, that helped to create some nice positive momentum, just to kind of keep feeling like I was improving, like I was recovering, and ultimately, to the point where um, eventually I was able to start, go for my first run, which was probably a minute or 2 minutes or something like that. But I mean, all in the spirit of just sort of moving forward. Um, let me see here. Um, yeah, I think blindness really teaches us um, to be resourceful. I think we have to be, and to bet on ourselves. To believe that we really can um, do things which others might not fully understand how we can. But I think it's about finding a way. I think we deal with challenges which others can't always readily, you know, relate to. Um, but I believe we're more able to adapt, to adversity as a result. And I think this is something I think that we can derive a lot of confidence from. I think it's really important to see the things which we feel are holding us back with curiosity, with a curious mind, and to know that in facing some of these kind of perceived setbacks, we really are growing constantly, and we're learning. You know, um, and I think really that's what helps us to really feel confidence. It engenders confidence. Um, it keeps us. I think it helps us to be stronger, engaged, autonomous, and vital. In the world, and that's really the idea. So, um, just before I finish here, I wanted to mention. Actually, I wanted to share a poem that I wrote a few years ago, um, and it's actually in my book Visions of Hope, um, which is really kind of the story of my running, and not just my running, but it focuses a lot on kind of my journey as a runner, and all the things that were happening kind of around that, and kind of in my life over the years of my competitive running. Um, but one of the things I've thought a lot about is sort of the perceptions that people have about blindness, right? And um, sort of the conclusions that people jump to, and so this poem really um, touches on some of those, and you know I think it just sort of gets at the idea that actually what people see um, is not always accurate, and really the idea um, that we really are more than what people might necessarily see at first glimpse. So the poem is called Blind, and I'll just read it here, and then I'll stop, and if people have questions, that would be great. Okay. So I see it in the spaces in between, stares like glances under sound, sixth sense activated through a dark screen to register a smile or catch a frown. I feel it in the questions people ask, with courage even through the feared unknown. I wonder how to penetrate the mask and permeate illusions etched in stone. So many of us walk a narrow line, impoverished, alone, misunderstood, though writers or musicians by design, or astronauts or doctors if we could, or lawyers, politicians if we dare, or grand piano tuners as we should, or teachers or translators, though it's rare, or artisans who fashion rock or wood. There is so much which people just don't see, beyond the image of a man and dog, or a girl reading with fingers carefully, or a grandmother squinting through a fog. And yet, it's up to us to lift the cloak, to look at skepticism in the eye, to open our own door, to go for broke, and not to let this lifetime pass us by. I met a stranger riding on the bus who spoke to me with a sympathetic look. He told me that his friend is just like us, and how he listens now to every book, and how he's extra sensitive to sound. And I smiled despite myself, for the man's refrain was nothing, not a search for common ground in rendering insanity more sane. Our vision manifests within the heart, beyond the narrow lens of open eyes, which register a fragment, but a part of a deeper shade of truth that underlies. With this vision, we make sense in our own way of the world, and setting out on our own course, we choose a route and make our furtive way with the coins and currency of our life force. We can cut against the grain of history, for the leaders, the visionaries in our crowd have eclipsed tradition. There's no mystery. They're simply not afraid to live out loud. So if I fail, so if I fail to meet your eye, don't blink, but extend your hand. Let's let go of our fear and chart a sea change sketched in braille and ink. Quote, quote. Towards a better world on the other side of here. So thanks very much. And I really appreciate your time. And definitely if people have questions, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason. That poem is beautiful. I'm just curious, is that available like in your book as well? I was just going to pop that into the chat where you can find the book as well as your album.
Yes, it is. It's in my book. Yes.
Okay, awesome. Great. And then, yeah, I guess we can lead into a Q&A here as well. As a reminder, like if you'd like to ask a question, please use the raised hand function. You can also type it in the chat or also the Q&A button. Um, One of the questions I've got so far is, um, I know you touched on it a little bit here, but what were some of the barriers that you faced as someone who is blind, low vision, and how did you overcome them? I know you talked a little bit about your brothers as well as coaches and family, but yeah, if you wanted to touch on that a little bit more, that'd be lovely.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think some of the barriers I would say are, you know, maybe attitudes of others or uncertainty that people feel sometimes. I mean, I think one of the big things often is um, not being able to make eye contact with people. People, I think it puts people um, out of their comfort zone. I would say, people have told me this. I mean, I've kind of learned this, as well. I think it's people are not automatically at ease with that. I think um, And one of the funny things that happens too sometimes is people will sometimes yell at me or kind of speak loudly because I think I can't hear them. I'm sure people on the call can relate perhaps to that as well, and the idea that we're blind and vision impaired, but not deaf though. But yeah, I think being underestimated, not understood, and just sort of the fear that people sometimes have of difference or, not being sure they're worried about kind of the right thing to say or do, or that you're not capable of doing something. I would also say sometimes my own limiting beliefs too, maybe I don't belong here. Maybe this isn't right for me. Maybe I don't have what it takes um, to do this. And then just sort of learning that that's actually not true at all. And that there's so much I can do and so much we can do as people who are blind and vision impaired. And, just kind of betting on yourself and just believing that you really are capable.
That's really, that's a really great answer. I have a question. I'm gonna allow Judith here from the audience here. I'm gonna unmute you, Judith, if you'd like to ask your question.
Can you hear me? No?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, I'm 82 years old, and I have been losing my vision for the last 40 years. And it's so interesting because I have a book club, my audio book club that I started about 15, 16 years ago with different people visually impaired. And so people from blind from birth, people who are older who have macular degeneration, people who are
Mhm.
just getting in. So there's so many levels of visual impairment. And of course, my gosh, if you start looking at all the diseases, you can hardly
Mhm.
count them that are eye diseases. And so I'm very pleased to hear what you have to say. You seem like an absolutely wonderful person to be um, doing what you have done and writing and all the rest of it. And
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you, but I also know that as an older person, I'm really pushing, trying to get involved. Well, I am involved in many, many things.
Mm.
Part of it is to keep up with the age thing and keep doing stuff. But I also know that people kind of pat me, on the shoulder, and uh, maybe it's ageism, maybe it's the blindness, but I have to almost say, no, no, I can do this. Don't stop me. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate what you had to say.
Thank you very much. And I think no one knows what we're capable of quite like we ourselves do, and I think, I mean, that can ebb and flow kind of, day to day, depending on just how we're feeling in general. But um, I think when we're really truly being honest with ourselves and kind of living in the truest way we can, I mean, to know that we really are capable of doing things which others just have no idea, how we can, consider doing some of these things, and I think it's sort of it's almost like the in a way like the standards we set for ourselves, and it's almost the idea of like accepting nothing less, and it's not. I mean, part of it is maybe proving to others, okay, we can do this, but a lot of it is proving to ourselves that this is who I am, and these are the values I have, and the things that light me up, and kind of the way I want to contribute to the world and show up in the world. And I think we all have that capacity, and we all owe it to ourselves to do that.
And balancing that with help
Yeah,
when we need
for
help.
sure. Oh, of course, most definitely. Yeah, but it's not to say we can do these things alone. And I think like seeking help and seeking the support and positivity around us and the people that we know are there for us. And yeah.
Thank you.
That's great. I have a question here in the chat from Sarah, and it says, "Hi, Jason. I'm really curious. Could you please describe what the Paralympic experience was like for you? What did day-to-day life look like during the games?"
Yeah, that's a great question for sure. It's a weird experience in the sense that it's not quite, real in a day to day kind of, the way we mostly live day to day. Because when you're at the Paralympics, you're staying in an athlete village. So there's, I think maybe close to 5,000 athletes in this basically community that's been created temporarily, for the games, for people to be housed and eat and basically live for a couple of weeks, sort of right before the games until the end, basically. And so it's very multicultural. I mean, you're walking around and you're hearing many, many different languages being spoken. Um, and it's sort of a mix of energy, like sort of pent up energy and nerves, because people are getting ready to compete in kind of the biggest event of their lives. Um, so yeah, I think people are working through all the range of emotions of sort of getting ready to compete, and then maybe success when they competed, or disappointment if it doesn't go well. And then at the end, it tends to be a bit of a party atmosphere because people are ready to kind of let their hair down, all the stress is kind of off and the competition is over. Um, yeah, I think my first Paralympics were in Sydney in Australia in 2000. And I mean, I think the first event or being part of something on that scale is always something that stays with you. Um, it was quite overwhelming. I think, just being so far away from home and all of a sudden, here in Canada, like as an athlete, I mean, you're pretty much under the microscope in track athletics, middle distance athletics. There's not many people paying a lot of attention. I would say you're at the track, doing your workouts and your training and even your races, and there's not many people around. Um, all of a sudden, though, you're in like the world is watching, and you're in a stadium with 60 or 70,000 people, and um, that is very nerve wracking, and nothing really equips you for that until you actually do it. Um, so I remember, trying to sort of internalize this idea that just pretend like you're at home running at the track in Hamilton, where I was living at the time, or going to school in Guelph. But of course, that's easier said than done. But all to say, I find it's a rush. It's an incredible privilege for sure. Um, but but it's stressful too. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm so grateful to have had the experiences of going to 5 Paralympics. Each one was very different and special in its own way. Um, but I think a lot of what I remember and the stories I can really connect with are just from sort of the day-to-day training and races and things that happened to kind of help me to get to the Paralympics, I would say, and just be in a position to try to qualify and try to compete there.
That's lovely. I have a question here from Robert. I'm just gonna allow you to speak there, Robert, and then you'll just have to unmute yourself.
Hello?
Hello, hey
Yeah,
Robert.
I just wonder what were your best times?
My best times were in the 1500 was 4:07, so 4 minutes and 7 seconds,
Oh,
and
that's great.
the 5K was 15:34. So I mean, this is going back kind of like sort of 10, 12 years ago now, I guess. Yeah. So, and things have gotten faster since then. And now
Oh
like the
yeah,
top,
the only other
yeah.
comment I would make, I used to work and I would say that I met people from around the world pretty much. And it's very interesting because with the public, I found the public pretty much like they were very interested in what I was doing. Like they were,
Mhm.
because I was out and about. And they would ask me,
Mhm.
well, how do and I would say, well, I've been doing this for many years, whatever,
Mhm.
and they say, oh, you're good at using your cane. I said, well, I've been doing it for many years. But I would try to explain to people, like not just brush them off. Like I'd say, well, okay, I took training and that's what I
Mhm.
do. And
Mhm.
and that's how I do it.
Sure. Yeah. I
So
mean, I think it's interesting what you say, Robert, because I think, and this is true in sport too, and I think it's true in blindness as well, right? Like, there's this idea that like, things just kind of happen, and yeah, you just, as you say, like, but it takes a lot of work, right? It takes a lot of work and a
well,
lot
and
of
then
effort and energy,
yeah,
right? To,
yeah, and
to
the other thing is too, like when I was growing up, I didn't get that much support really. I lived in a small town,
yeah.
and they were really backwards about blindness. Like, oh my
Mhm.
God, I don't want to even go into it too much, but it was a horrible town to be living in because it
Mhm.
wasn't even safe, let alone like
Yeah.
it took years for them to put a sidewalk on our street.
Yeah.
And it was a busy road, like it was the main
Mhm.
thoroughfare, and it was
Mhm.
narrow, and there was ditches on both sides. I would say it would not be safe for a blind person to be living there because you wouldn't get around very well but
Yeah.
things got better in the early 70s and stuff, and that's the way it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for
And
sharing.
yet
Yeah.
I
And
had it. I'm Troy. I had it the other way. So-
Um, That's great. I have another question here in the chat from a Magda. And they say, I've experienced pity from others as a partially sighted person. How do you deal with it? Especially considering all that you have achieved. I used to run so I can appreciate what it takes to run.
Oh, that's awesome, Magda. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I mean, I think like by and large, I think people mean well, and they're trying to connect, and they're trying to find a kind of a common ground or a way to form a connection or show empathy. So I think talking about pity. I mean, I think I this is kind of how I guess I feel when people because often people will say, "Oh my God, yeah, I'm so sorry you're blind, or I'm so sorry you can't see. It must be so hard, you know." And yeah, I genuinely think people are just trying to reach out and trying to reach me or form a connection or but I just try to remember that this is it's an uncomfortable space for some people and it's not so much about kind of saying, well, I've done these things, or it's more just I think trying to meet them where they are and recognize that they really are trying to trying to reach out, and then really I think it's more the idea that like probably what I say, almost showing by example, like this is what I'm able to do, but not I don't tend to talk about it as much, but more just like I'm able to kind of go out and have a coffee and talk to people and work and then hopefully people can sort of see from that it's actually not so bad. It's actually there's lots of things that as a blind person like you're not limited. There's many things you can do.
That's a wonderful answer. I have a more of a comment here from a Stephanie. Stephanie says, "Hi, Jason. We met back in the mid 2000s. I don't know if you remember me. I did running track while I was a student at WRMS, but eventually switched to goalball. I've since moved to Alberta for my work, and my comment is to echo your remark about how we have a great community within sports and blind sports. Moving to Alberta by myself, having my sport contacts and friends were some of the people I reached out to when I was moving to this new and unfamiliar environment. And I'm now helping to coach the recreational goalball team in Edmonton."
I love that, Stephanie. Thanks so much for sharing that. And yes, I think I think when we can uproot ourselves and go and live in a different city and face kind of the some of the feelings of kind of loneliness or uncertainty that comes with that. It's like if I can do this, I can do anything, right? And I think it just sort of it just builds into our tool chest of what we can do, what we know we can do, and what we know we can kind of overcome or take on. So that's great that you're involved in coaching. I'm happy to hear that and just giving back and supporting others.
Yeah, the community is really just such a beautiful part. I have a question here from a Nelly, and they said, "What would you tell someone who is just starting to use the cane, but has a lot of imposter syndrome about using it and being self-conscious about it?"
Yeah, that's a great question, Nelly. And I have to be honest in saying, just to qualify it, that I never having been someone who lost my eyesight, I never, I never had that sense of imposter syndrome being a person who was born blind and used a cane from, almost the beginning. But I know many people that have, transitioned to becoming cane users, and I think it's complicated. It's not sort of a black and white transition. Um, I think I would say just to give yourself some grace with that and um, trust that using a cane is absolutely a great option for anyone when it comes to safety and just feeling empowered to go out in the world. And if that's what can help you to to make the difference for you to make that sort of make that leap, then I just encourage you to do it and not think twice about it. Um, and yeah, just give yourself that opportunity and know that it's there for you. It's there as a support for you. It's there as a resource. Yeah, to make life a little bit easier, hopefully, and a little bit better.
Yes, that's great. And thank you, Nellie, for asking a question about the white cane during this week. It's a great time to do so. I have a question from a Bill Conway here. I'm just going to allow you to speak, Bill, but you'll have to unmute yourself. You're good to go.
Thank you very much, Jason. First of all, to try and help you adjust your video there, at the very top of your laptop screen, there is a slide bar.
Okay, it must be probably a
Slide to the
visual
left,
thing.
your camera is.
I'll try.
No, it's actually, yeah, because I had to learn it yesterday when I emceed the White King webinar here in British Columbia.
Okay,
So
yeah,
it's in the dead center and it's a slide bar.
Okay.
It's at the very edge of your screen in the middle.
Yeah, I'm feeling around here, Bill, but it's just sort of causing the document to kind of move around a bit. So I don't know. That's something I'll have to play with maybe after.
In the future.
I appreciate the suggestion, yeah.
But once again, I thank you for your inspirational talk, sir. I had the privilege and honor to be at the 1980 Second Olympiads for people with disabilities as a B1 athlete in cross-country skiing. So that's the only Olympics I had the opportunity and pleasure of participating in. But I've learned how to run on my own as a blind person, and yes, used a guide. And we used skipping ropes at that time to guide us with my guide. And yes, I have done the Vancouver Marathon back in the 80s. So I know what running is like. I've had the privilege of running, and I've tried it on my own on open fields only because sometimes there's a tree snuck out in front of me, and it somehow, hey, you're in my way, so it stopped me cold. But no, it's a privilege to hear you, sir. And I think when it comes to looking at assumptions, like a lot of people say, I don't look blind. And I turn around and say, well, can you please tell me what a blind person looks like?
Yeah, right.
And I live in a very small community on the Sunshine Coast of British Columbia. And I love the town that you come from, sir. I know it very, very well.
Okay.
And
thank you.
I've been there. I was born there, so I know Hamilton very well.
Okay.
But anyway, thank you very much, sir, and good luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you, and congratulations on your own, participating in the Paralympics and running and the sports you've been involved in too. And I appreciate your kind words. Thank you.
I have another question here to this person. They joined with their phone number, so I don't have a name, but I'll allow you to talk, and then you'll just have to unmute yourself. It's the 437 number. There you go. You should be good.
Hi, Jason. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, hi, Jay. It's actually, my name is Jason as well. We met many years ago. My last name's Caruana. We're at W. Ross. When you went there,
yes.
I was going at the same time as you. I was a bit younger than you, but actually, my relatives, I don't know if you remember, I told you my relatives came from Northern Ireland as well, and stuff like that. My great grandfather was from Belfast and stuff like that. So yeah. Anyways, and you did speak, and I remember when you did go to, you and Bill Morgan went to the Australian Olympics, and that was pretty cool having both of you guys representing Canada that year, and when you guys came back and you did the banquet. But I have my two questions are for you. Is I'm assuming training was key, and you had the persistence, because I remember you training every day. And another thing is being blind. When you're going to, because I know you went to a bunch of different countries for the Olympics, Now, because a regular person going to a regular Olympics, the culture is different. Now you're adding a disability. How did you cope with that as well? Besides focusing on the running, focusing on your discipline. I would like your answer to that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, thanks so much for your question, and it's nice to hear from you. Um, it's a good question. I don't know that I have a really clear answer other than in terms of focusing in being in a sort of a new environment, a new culture, um, as a person who's blind. Other than to say like you just sort of, I think my attitude was like you know this is just something I kind of have to do, or something that I'm open to exploring, I guess. And you know, I would say too, going to the Paralympics, you're not on your own. I mean, you're with a team, you're with other athletes and coaches, and in my case, my guide runner as well. So you're not quite sort of thrown in there completely on your own. So that helps. I mean, and I think that's true of sport. It's never really just you yourself. It's you're part of a group, you're part of a kind of a team or a community. And um, and I think running, as I said earlier, like running is individual, but I mean, it really isn't, because, and especially I think as a runner who's blind or visually impaired, I mean, you're with a guide, you're with some others, and that's really what I think helps to allay some of the uncertainty that you might feel going somewhere new, or somewhere where you're a little bit less sure, or feeling a bit off balance. It helps to have people around you that are part of your team.
That's great, Jason. And I'm just being mindful of our time because we're actually getting close to 7 o'clock, which is crazy because I felt like it went by so quickly. So I was just wondering if you'd like to just give a final message to our attendees before we say we part our ways.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I want to thank you, Amanda, and Sarah and Shellyanne and the CCP team, just for organizing this event, and taking time to, yeah, I guess, create spaces for discussion and dialogue about blindness, because I think it's really important. And many of us, or most of us, I think, kind of go about our day to day in a kind of a sighted world, as it were, right? So I think it's really nice to just come together with other people who can relate to some of the things we're talking about, some of the challenges and the opportunities, and with blindness. And I think there really are so many opportunities. I think the sky's the limit, and I think the limiter in many instances is ourselves, and just kind of the belief that we can do so many things. Um, and I think too, we all have kind of day-to-day lives and responsibilities, and things that have to be done. But I think what really brings life to light is when we can find ways to tap into the things that kind of light us up. And it doesn't have to be sports. It can be music. It can be gardening, cooking, reading, all kinds of things. But I think it's just figuring out what some of those things are, and then just developing them and exploring them, and trying to connect with other people who care about some of these things too. And that's really helped me. I think just having running is something that's kind of been a mainstay, I guess, and a constant, for a lot of my life. And even though I'm no longer competing as part of the national team, I mean, I'm still trying to run every day, or almost every day, and it's just helps me to stay grounded and kind of rooted in something I really love to do. So I'd encourage people to find whatever that is, and doesn't, again, have to be sport, but just yeah, just look for that, and don't hold back, don't hesitate to explore it. So thanks so much. I really appreciate the chance to be here.
Thank you so much, Jason. I think everyone really, really enjoyed it. I know I did. I learned lots. Just as a reminder to everyone, we also have another one with Priscilla Gagne on Thursday from 7 to 8 p.m. and she does judo. And I'm also just going to type in the chat real quickly here again Jason's book as well as his album. But yeah, I just want to say thank you again, Jason, and thank you for everyone for attending. And if we don't see you on Thursday, then wishing you all a very happy White Cane Week and good luck to any curlers if anyone happened to join tonight. And yeah, I hope everyone has a lovely rest of your night.